Peace and blessings, family. My name is Jay. Today, I'd like to talk to you guys about detachment and why it's important to detach from things once they become too draining, too overwhelming. In other words, too toxic for you. But before I talk about detachment, we must talk about the opposite of it, which leads to detachment in the first place. And we all know that the opposite of detachment is attachment. So, we know that an attachment is a bond and a connection, or like a contract, however you like to, whatever definition you want to apply to attachment. Anyway, how do we form an attachment? Well, or how, not so much how does one form an attachment, but how do you get attached to something? You get attached to something because you get attached to something or someone because you, you derive pleasure from them, or you derive pleasure from someone or something. Something about them makes you feel good. Something about them or that resonates with you. Draws you to them, attracts you to them, and that is how you get attached. And so now we know how attachment is formed. Now sometimes we'll there are cases where, anyway, one second, hold on. I got my saying all up on the scene. Well, sorry about that. But sometimes we'll find ourselves attached to or connected to certain things or people who may have been good for us or resonated at first, and if it's a thing that may have been good for us or resonated with us at first, but over time, in certain cases, these people, places, or things will have ran their course. And I want to use an analogy to kind of, I want to use an analogy to kind of break down what it is I'm trying to explain here. So let's use the people as an example, and let's picture these. With the people, let's use these two people as a relationship. And with these two people in a relationship, let's look at one person as being the one that attracts and the other one being attracted. And you could look at it either way, but we'll say we're the one that attracts. And uh, with us being the one that attracts, I'm gonna use us as being a water pitcher. And let's say this pitcher is full of water, so we're full of energy, have very high energy, high vibrational, all that good stuff. And then say we're attracted to someone who may we're attracted to someone have who may have something we like, or obviously who has something we like, otherwise we wouldn't be attracted. Sorry. And then they're also attracted to our energy. Or better yet, another way to look at it is like we say we have this full pitcher of water and we have all this energy, and we see those around us whose energy aren't as high, and so I know knowing us, usually as high energy people, we usually are aware of the people who have lower energy, and sometimes we find ourselves in cases or lower vibrations. And so sometimes we find ourselves in certain cases where we would feel like we are obligated to help these people, and so we end up helping them out. And at first, we may be able to give them a little bit of guidance and help them out, but at a certain point, it may get and then if you want to look at it from the standpoint of the pitcher, say we're that full pitcher of water, and then this person has a cup, and we pour this water into that cup for them to drink it. and say they drink from it, they get some energy, they're revitalized. And say we're helping this person off their feet to help them get their thing back together. But let's say that this is one of those kind of relationships where we find ourselves we find ourselves pouring all our water out to this person, and we know and how I just explained that water is energy. In other words, we're giving all our energy to this person, and we know what the relationship is supposed to go to. It's supposed to go back and forth, regardless. So, let's say we're in a say we are in that relationship where we put all that energy out towards the other person, but this might be one of those people who will just take all that energy and not give anything back, either because they may feel overwhelmed, which is where you put all your energy into that cup and they don't drink from it, all your power into that cup, or some of your power into that cup and they don't drink from it, however you want to look at it. Or they constantly drink all that water from the cup, and then we're constantly giving it to them, assuming we don't know any better by this point, and they keep drinking it. Next thing you know, we don't have a pitcher of water anymore, and they have all of our water. So now we are empowered. So now not we, but they are empowered, and we are not. And so, more often than not, in that situation, um, either we're either with our energy, we either were too overwhelming to the other person, or they began to become overwhelming to us. If we were too overwhelming, that's where the cup is getting filled, but not being drinking from. And when you pour water into a cup, when you don't drink from it, when it's not being received or taken in, it's gonna eventually it'll overflow, it'll flood, and then it'll become overwhelming. It'll be too draining on the other person. They'll be feeling like they're smothered, and they may not express that. So that's how our energy may be too radiant, it may be too smothering for the other person. And they'll get overwhelmed. But I'll get there in a minute. And then on the other end, which is the one that I really talk about, is how we'll give them all that water and they constantly drink from it. But now we have no water left, even though we are expecting them to give us back some water when we give them some water, because that's how it's supposed to go. But that didn't happen. So now we're drained and they have all the power. And more often than not, this is usually a case where we ended up being, manipulated by or taken advantage of by the other person. And so this is the main one, and where actually both of them, but we're talking about the one where we give and don't get anything back. These are the relationships, whether it's with a person or a thing, that we must detach from. And obviously, either way you look at it, you should detach anyway, because energy must always be balanced out. It must never be too drained at the same time. It must never be too giving either. And there's like there's a flip side to it. The more energy you put out, the more of a chance. Depending on where you put it, the more energy you put out, the greater chance you have of being drained. So make sure you're putting your energies into the right areas. But as for the relationships, when you're in that relationship where you are either being too overwhelming or being too draining, you must detach in either one. Say you're the one that's say we're in the relationship where we're being too overwhelming, we must detach so that the other person can drink from the cup and then give us something back so they can balance it out equally. And that's when you have the relationship where there is going to be balance and compromise, but we must first detach so others can set up their boundaries and get some of their power. And then the other one, which is the one that we most usually encounter most, where we get drained, where we're being drained. And that's the situation where we were the brutal truth about it is that that's the situation where we were giving too much of our power to sources outside of ourselves, expecting them to get that back over and over again. They never did. So that's where we have to more often than not, that'll be the relationship where you do have to cut that person out and not have a relationship with that person or that thing again, so that you can take back your power. And That's one of the main reasons why you detach in the first place, is to take back your power, set up your boundaries, know when you're being too pressing on the other person, when the other person may be pressing you too much. This is the whole point of being. This is the whole point of detaching, because so that you can establish your personal boundaries, so that people's boundaries aren't being overstepped on either end. So you can look at it from either end. You can look at this from either end. And so, how exactly do you go about detaching? If it's a relationship, it's quite simple. It's just in a matter of how you do it. And when it's a relationship with another person, you what's this going on? Excuse me, 1 second. Okay, apologies about that. I got some messages, but where was I at? Oh, when it's a relationship that's dealing with other, when it's a relationship that deals with another person and the person has become draining, not too much to deal with on our end and not theirs. We must. This is where we cut them. This is where we have to. This is either where we have to find a way to establish our own boundaries, so we can build it back up again. And if there is no way to compromise, if we feel like this, or if we feel like this relationship may not be able to be built up again, this is where we cut them out, so that we can find relationships that do serve more, will be more harmonious and balanced for us. And ultimately, the end game, it's just all about how you do it. You can do it in a way, you can do it in a way where there won't, where you can just up and leave and not really do anything. But that'll leave the other person with a lack of clarity. So you always want to do it in a form. You always want to do it in a formal way, so that um, whether you choose to build it up or choose to leave the connection, people will know where you stand and why it didn't work out. So that's the way you're supposed to do it. There's always a good and a bad way to do it, any and everything. So yeah, anyway, how you do it, you simply just tell this person, if you want to rebuild it, say, I would like my space, I would like my boundaries, so that we can build this up the right way. Or I would like to I would like to I would like to I would like to end this, so that I can, move on to a relationship which will better serve me and fulfill me. If you get the gist. So detachment is always about empowerment. And another and then going back to the water, and then going back to the thing with the pitcher and the cups and the water again. And when you do that, you'll be able to put some water back into your pitcher again, so it could be full again. In other words, you'll be able to fill yourself back up with energy and higher vibration, so you can be very loving and nurturing and powerful again. But this time, do it for the right people and do it with people that serve you. Another way to look at it is like, say where we're on the defensive, or we feel like we're being drained in another way. You know when when you're in a school, and when you're in a school, and say like a high school, for example, or any, and not don't gotta be a high school, but it could be any place or location where it's very crowded and there's a lot of energies around. Say you're someone who is very receptive and very sensitive. When you know that you're around all those different energies and spirits, don't you find yourselves getting drained and overwhelmed because of so many because of all those different energies and spirits around you? Obviously, the answer is going to be yes, because there's too many circuits or energies or outlets that are around, that are that you're picking up on. And so obviously, what's the natural response here? Going to obviously, we got attached to it because we're sensitive to and receptive to it. But once we realize that we were too attached to it, what's the only natural thing to do? It is to detach. And so usually what we do by that point is that we say, if it's any place, we'll just use a high school for an example. Say it's a high school, and usually it's a cafeteria, or at least my own personal experience. Usually it's a cafeteria, so um, you'll leave that cafeteria, and if you don't leave the cafeteria, you'll go to a spot in the cafeteria where it's extremely secluded, where you have your own space, where you're not being at all bothered, so that you can get away from all those influences. And then in doing that, you'll be able to establish your own boundaries, and doing that, you establish your own boundaries, and you establish your own personal power. And that's another way to look at it. People might all those other energies might be too much, and you say, and you go, look, this is water too. It might be too much. You could look at it as water or fire, and say, since these energies, it doesn't. I don't want to get lost in all that, but just it's too overwhelming, so you detach. But and when you do that, you establish your own boundaries. You establish your own boundaries, and you empower yourself. And that's the main goal of it. And I say, let's say that we're talking. Another way to look at it is like, say, with communication. Say somebody's talking to us, or we're talking to somebody, and our communication is very passionate and very uncompromising and unwavering. Um, if it's us communicating like that to the other person, um, they may be on the listening and receiving, and not really resisting what they may feel like they can, what they may feel like they can resist. And so they may end up getting overwhelmed, and they might think that we're being too forceful. And so in their case, they need to resist. They should be resisting and questioning what it is that they're hearing from us. Or otherwise, we may become too forceful on them with our speech, and and vice versa. It can go around the other way too. And when someone's communicating to us, and we feel like they may be too forceful, when we feel like that, keyword, when we feel like that, we're actually supposed to put that out there. And when we don't, put that out there because we don't want to, we don't want to resist, and seem like we're in opposition or an enemy, we actually make it worse because we don't, express what it is we know we should be expressing, and then we give our power to the other person, and we end up resenting them. So yeah, when in the case when in either case, if we get attached to what someone says, and that's the only way we're able to feel what they say, you have to be attached to it. And when you feel like you need to express and detach from what they said, so you can establish what it is that you believe in. Um, only then will they know where we stand, or only then will they know where we stand. How are we going to look at that? So it's these are just there's always these are just a couple of reasons for why it is important to detach. They all deal with taking back and establishing and maintaining your own personal power, and then setting up your boundaries so that they don't get overstepped, and so that you don't get drained and taken advantage of. And also on the other end, when you have your own power, so you don't take advantage of others. So when you know you're being too forceful, you pull back. And when others being too forceful towards you, you push forward. Both are forms of detachment. You detach from someone's force towards you and push back that way, and let them know this is where you detach and create your boundaries. Or when you do it towards others, and you can see that you're becoming too overwhelming on them, that's when you pull back, and then let them, establish their boundaries and compromise. And with ourselves as people, let's say, our own, and you can look at it. You can look at also like thoughts and feelings. So when you start to think too much, you get into the cycle of overthinking, getting lost into all these ideas you may have about someone or something, and then you're mentally going, insane, mad, how you want to look at it. And you're aware of that, and when you become aware of it, is the moment that you need to let go and detach from that. Otherwise, we'll become we'll become a slave to our own, ideas and illusions, and get lost in them. And some people may never find their way back out. And then it's the same thing with feelings. You know, you might get too lost into the feelings because we're so into them that we may never know when we're dealing with our own feelings with somebody else. And these are more reasons for why it's so important to detach, so we know which thoughts and feelings are ours and which thoughts and feelings aren't, what we're receiving and what we're giving, if all that makes sense. And then another thing about when we take the action of detaching, if you most of the time, whether consciously or unconsciously, you probably notice that when you detach from people, places, and things which don't serve you, and if not don't serve you, are too overwhelming for you, or being too overwhelming towards them, you'll find that you're able to see things more clearly because you're not being too forceful or being too forced upon. You're not, being too abusive or being too, or not getting, and you're not being too abusive at the same time. You're not being abused. How we want to look at it. And when you find that balance, it help. When you find that balance and that harmony, and things are going smoothly and easier, it almost always helps you see things in a um, it always helps you see things more clearly and in a much more enlightening and pure way. And you'll be like, and then you'll be like, oh, since I set these boundaries and show some form of resistance, now I can see why it was playing out like that, or why it was going like that, and vice versa if it's the other person. And like I said, however you want to look at it. And so it's like you can also look at it as a ball of fist. The harder you hold on to it, the more stressful, the more intense it gets, and the more stressful it's going to become. But when you let go, you feel a lot lighter and a lot heavier, so that you don't have to keep dealing with all that tension, all that frustration and stress on oh, whether it's inside you or outside of you. So there's a lot of different ways to know to go about detaching. The easiest way to do it is you always want to do it in a very formal and very practical or rational way, so that um, there's like that balance between like your head and your heart. It, but that's something that's completely different. And then if you want to look at it, another way to look at it too is like with water. Say you the person in the body, you dive into a body of water or a pool. Usually when you go below it, you can only been there for so long before you start to drown. And naturally, that's because the only reason, the opportunity to drown, was opened up because we had died. We jumped into that water and we chose to go under it. But now, since we got so attached to it to the point where we've been under for too long, which we may find ourselves in a scenario where we may be drowning, that's when we know, instinctively and naturally, that it's time to come up and detach from, all that, you know, um, being all the way down up in that, and like, just like the ball fist, or the constant thoughts, or all the feelings up in here, all the analogies ultimately point to the same thing. And so that's when you come up to get some air so you can breathe and then not drown, and so you can be balanced again. So there's so many ways to present this and look at it, but ultimately it regards how you look at it all and deal with setting up boundaries so you can in the case where you don't have any power, so you can take back your power and maintain it. In the case where you already do have your power, so you can learn how to become more practical and more tactful with the power that it is that you have, so that you're not scarring and burning others and abusing them in the process. There's always got to be a balance regardless of which side of the spectrum that you are on. So um yes, yeah, and, things like these are why it is important. It is important to detach when you feel like when you feel like you're becoming too forceful, or feel like you're being everything's being too forced on you. Whether you feel like you're going through a drought, or whether you feel like you're or whether you feel like you may be dealing with an internal drought, or the other may be feeling like you drain them. And like I always say, detach so that both sides can when it's in sense of relationship, so both sides can have boundaries. And if it's with ourselves, so we can have our own boundaries within ourselves and not be susceptible to our own illusions and also others. And same thing with the feelings. But I don't want to take it any further than this because I'll just keep dragging it on and you know adding more to it than I already have. So I hope that me sharing this is giving a brighter way of looking at some things regarding detaching and unattaching from certain circumstances or situations regarding places or relationships. And if it did, I'm glad I could help. And if there's any other ideas or any um, kind of feedback that you guys could give to me, it would be much appreciated. So yeah, just know when things begin to hit extremes, either on the higher or low end, that's when it's time for you to detach. Just remember that. But yeah, I'm gonna and I always do it with tact and being formal and being practical, so that you just don't go sheerly off of any of the feelings. You still gotta be rational with the sake of balance out your head and your heart. But anyway, that's another thing. I'm gonna I'm gonna end it there though, and uh yeah uh yeah. Sorry for this. Sorry for the awkward pauses, but yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. If there's anything you guys like for me to know, anything that I can work on, it'd be much appreciated, and I'll try to work on make it better for the future videos. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. You guys have an awesome day. Peace.